Can you really paint a realistic portrait using acrylic markers? In this video, I'll show you exactly how I do it, from the first sketch and base colors to shadows, highlights, and tiny details that bring the face to life. I'm using cardboard I collected from my stash and this Prismacolor erase pencil in Tuscan Red. If you just want to see the painting process, I completely understand. Feel free to skip ahead. I'll put the marker on the screen so you'll know where it starts. But I wanted to share my sketching process because it's messy, and I just thought that maybe if anyone's a beginner, or even if you're not a beginner, just to let you see that it's okay to erase, be messy, keep trying and retrying, because sometimes on the internet you see people who do these fast, amazing sketches. They use these like the Loomis method. I have nothing against it, and different methods, and they have this beautiful sketching process. I love seeing those videos myself, but for me, and I'm sure for other people, it doesn't always work out like that. The sketching process can be, messy. Here you see I'm trying to figure out, I could see that looking at the proportions that they were off. So I'm constantly looking at the reference, trying to, readjust, and I erase. Sometimes I erase quite a bit, but it is what it is. And it really won't matter that much because Posca markers or acrylic markers are opaque. But anyway, like I said, I just thought that it would be good to see a real process, and to see that it's okay if the sketch is wonky, if it's not perfect. I had to lower the eyes. I could see they were up too high, and I'm just going with the flow, constantly looking at the reference, and then adjusting as I go. So this is the final sketch. So the supplies I'm using for this, I'm using paper towel, a piece of a paper bag that I cut up, paint brushes, and of course the Posca markers. I'm starting out doing my shadow areas using this lilac. Now I'm going in with magenta, and you'll see throughout this process that I use a variety of colors. I found that when doing portraits, when you use various colors, it helps to make the portrait not look so flat. It basically, the colors bring life to me, to the portrait. So here you see that I'm starting to blend using the brush, and you have to make sure the colors are wet. The paint is still wet when you blend, and you see that I was wiping. That's why I have that paper towel to wipe the color off the tips when I mix the colors. So again, I'm using the brush, and I'm trying to get that pink, that magenta off of that color. So again, I'm mixing in various colors, and then I'm using my brush, and then you're going to see here in a minute my favorite method of blending, which would be still using the brush. So we're not at that part yet. I thought it was coming up, but it's not. Still using the brush, which works fine for blending. And again, I'm using various colors. And with Poscas, that's the one thing with Poscas, there's not a lot of skin tone colors. So mixing the colors, you can get, new shades. So that's another good thing to do. There it is, my finger. My favorite method to use, which would be my finger. To each his own, but for me, it works best. I use my brush as well, but I love my finger. At that point, you can see that it was dry, and that's an example of how it has to be wet, because if the paint is not wet and it's dry, like there, it won't blend. So again, you have to keep, so, which is new for me. You have to move a little bit faster, because acrylic paint dries fast. So again, you have to do that blending while the paint is still wet. So as you can see, I'm using pinks, I'm using browns, I'm using just various colors, and I'm mixing. So lighter colors, of course, I'm using for like highlights, and then the darker colors for the shadows, and then I use different shades for my midtones. But I wish I could say there's some trick to choosing your colors, but for me, it just comes down to experimenting. And that's the great part about it. The fun part is that you get to experiment and learn from, just trying different colors. And with the great thing about acrylic markers is they're opaque. So if you try something and you don't like it, you can just color right over it. Like here you see I'm using a pop of orange. And of course, this is not the color in the reference, but many of the colors in the reference I don't have. So I'm just, experimenting and trying different things. Now, if anyone knows of some other way of choosing the correct colors, please let us all know in the comments. But for me, like I said, I think it all comes from playing around and experimenting. And I think it's a great way to learn. stick with me because I know you're probably looking at this and thinking, oh, wow, this looks absolutely crazy. And at this point, it is looking a bit strange. But, you know, when painting and even sketching, drawing, you go through the ugly stage and you have to keep pressing through it. And I talk about it all the time. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But that's how you learn. So again, stay with me. Again, I'm just trying different colors and constantly observing, looking at my reference. Wherever I see highlights in the reference, then I use the lighter colors. When I see the midtones, I do that. And you see, there's an example of how the two colors mix together and form that new color when you blend them together, which is great because that particular color, I don't have a marker that color. So that's the great thing about the mixing and blending as you go and experimenting. Also, I'm using, as I said, Posca markers. But that's another thing that I wanted to talk about is that, again, here we go with, there's so many amazing creatives online, and there's nothing against, because I do it myself, watching different videos and all of that. But online, you see so many, now the new thing is all these different types of acrylic markers. And when I tell you, I have been so tempted to purchase some of them because they have all these huge color ranges and these new nibs, like the brush nibs. And I've been really tempted. But I also have been telling myself to use what I have. Before I go any further, you see there, I was shaking the marker and some came out, that glob came out. So I let the paper towel, absorb it and then just paint right over it. Because again, Poscas are opaque. Anyway, I digress. Back to what I was talking about. So with the markers, I've been so tempted to buy some of the new brands that have been popping up online. But then I thought about it and I'm like, I have all these Posca markers that I purchased over time. I accumulated all of them. But I purchased them back when the Poscas were a thing. And I'm like, I'm going to use what I have. So I said all that to say, use what you have. It can be very tempting, especially when you see so many people using them. But it's great, and I'm learning to, just figure out how to work with what you have. And I mean, it's okay if you want to, purchase them, but if you can't afford it or you don't have them, don't feel like, you're missing out. Okay, so that's my soapbox for today. Use what you have. So here I'm adding the background. I figured since I had that purple in her hair, I thought green would be a nice color, would be a nice pop for the background. So I'm putting this green background in. It's just a solid background. Backgrounds are something I have to work on. Future video anyway. So now with her lips, I'm using, what color is this? Let's see. It does not say on the marker, so I can't tell you. But anyway, I used a variety of shades for her lips. And you'll see in a minute that brown was too juicy. And so it came out more than I wanted to. But again, they're opaque. So you can just go right over them. And actually it worked out for the better because when I mixed the colors together, it gave me a new shade that I liked. Um, so yeah, that's just experimenting and trying and going with the flow. So the lips will come together for the most part in a minute. I'm going to keep mixing in different colors. And yeah. So as I said, I'm mixing in different shades of pinks, reds, and wine colors for and brown for her lips. I'm about to move on to her hair, so I'll come back to her lips later. But for the hair, I started with the base of purple because I wanted that purple to, come through and be a highlight through the black. So now I'm adding the black, and with her hair, it's in a curly type style with waves. And so I'm making those circular motions. You'll be able to see because the paint is wet, and I keep going, you know, doing again those circular motions and for the waves and for the curls, and then the curls on the the outer parts of her hair. I start to add those in, and then I'll add in the stray hairs, which I think is something you should always do to make it not look like a block of hair. But I do that later with a pencil. So here I'm putting the moles that she has on her face. And then now I'm going in to do the highlights for the lips. And we're nearing the end. So, like always, around this time is where my storage fills up. And so I have to go off camera to do the pencils, the final touches with colored pencils. But here's the final reveal. And overall, I'm pleased with the way it came out. Of course, there are so many things that I could find that I could do differently. But overall, I enjoyed the process. It was fun. And, um, you know, I learned along the way. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks so much for watching. If you have any tips that you'd like to share, please with using acrylic markers, please put them in the comments. Thank you.